Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, no matter where you are. This is KCTV News. My name is Sayero. I am going to be reporting weekly on events that are occurring right in our very midst, right now, happening right now. As we will this week, we'll be discussing Amir Locke in Minneapolis. We'll be talking about the no-knock warrant and the history of it. Fred Hampton and how no-knock warrant was applied there. Demontario Gibson out of Brookhaven, Mississippi. Another McMichael's type of a situation where in this case it's a father and son named the Case that did similar types of things to Demontario Gibson in Brookhaven, Mississippi, and we'll get into that. Then finally, we'll be discussing the cover-up of the Ronald Green case, a case that Louisiana United International is pursuing, and discoveries that are occurring with regards to the governor of the state of Louisiana and the Louisiana State Police. So, hot and burning right now, we're going to be talking about what happened with Amir Locke. And we all know what happened with Amir Locke. Let's not make any mistakes about it. The shooting that had occurred with Amir Locke, as we saw that the officers, shall I say, the imperialist militia, entered the house by using the key, first of all, quietly as a mouse. Here it is, wee hours in the morning. They say about 7 a.m. or 6:54 a.m. Minnesota time. And then when they entered the house, they came in stomping. They hollered out, "Police, police." Young Amir Locke was sleeping on the couch, as we all know. And while sleeping, one of the officers, the shooter, kicked the edge of the couch, which caused Amir Locke to then get up groggily, holding his weapon, and as we all saw in video, never once pointing it at these imperialists, at these killers, at these murderers. And so he had his finger on the barrel. And we say this: it is the same imperialist law, the no-knock law, that was used to murder Chairman Fred Hampton. It was this same imperialist law, the no-knock law, that was used to murder Breonna Taylor. It was the same imperialist law, the no-knock law, that was used to murder Amir Locke. The imperialist no-knock law is a colonial state law only used on Black African people, and this law is taboo and never used on white colonizer people. The imperialist no-knock law is specifically invoked on Black African people only, and we know that. It's like a lynching law. It's like what happened with George Floyd. This is the same, matter of fact, I want to tell you, it was the same judge that signed off, because the judge has to sign off on the warrant. It was the same Judge Cahill, the one that did the trial for Derek Chauvin, the murderer that kept his knee on the neck of George Floyd for 9 minutes and 30-something seconds, 36 seconds, I believe. He murdered him. It was the same judge, again, that oversaw that trial, is the same judge that signed the warrant that killed Amir Locke. The same judge. So keep that in mind. Again, Amir Locke was asleep. We all know the story on that, the history on that. And it took his parents, it took the initiative, the issue of perseverance to get this on the front burner. It took that. With every one of our cases, if you notice, the ones that we never even know about, it takes an initiative of groups of people to come together. Why is that with us? Why does that happen with Africans in America? Well, probably Africans globally. This only happens because we are part of the mode of production in a country that was stolen, where the native indigenous people were butchered. Keep all this in mind, where we are all hated. And we only hate it simply because you have killers and rapists and murderers that come in and take a country, and then these same killers, murderers, and butchers that have taken the country go to other lands. They do the same thing. They're doing it in Afghanistan. They're doing it over in Mali. They set up drones over there. They got drone stations to attack other countries but the United States military is all over there. Why don't they get the hell out of there? If they called that, if you remember, Trump called it the SO countries. We'll say it shit old countries. That's what he called it. And they all think of us that way. We, on the other hand, have to change our mode of operation, the way we do business. We can't keep believing that a system that never has worked for us, a system that did not intend to work for us, will ever work for us. It does not work for us. It is us that want to believe. It is us, we, the Africans in this country, for a lot of the large part. I'm not going to say those who know that it's hopeless. When you hear someone say to you, and I was an avid voter, when you hear someone say to you that they don't vote, well, you know why. The vote really meant nothing. The vote, as you see, everybody voted to take Trump out and to put Biden in, and then you found out you went from one colonizer to the next colonizer. What has he done for you? What are they doing? You have to beg now. They're begging for an African female sister for Supreme Court. Then they're vetting her as if she's got spots all over her. We'll never be looked at as equals in this country. We'll never be looked at really as human beings. We have issues going on in football where the coaches, a coach who was told that if he took buyouts, if he took a payoff, $100,000 to lose a game, in order for them to get first draft pick, then he would definitely earn his weight in salt, his salt and weight, or however they put that. The fact of the matter is, it was an insult to his own integrity. It was an insult to what he told what coaching meant. It's an insult to everything that he thought ideologically about the script of what is called the American Constitution, the American policy, the American politics. This is what we are up against more often than not and every time. No matter if you go into the courtroom, the victim, you end up becoming the criminal. Now I want to go into the history of no-knock warrants. And we're going to go into this history. Now I'm going to talk about Fred Hampton afterwards and show you how this applies, how this goes back. No-knock warrants is a product of the country's war on drugs, launched by President Richard Nixon in the 1970s and gained momentum in the 1980s under President Ronald Reagan. It is associated with militarization of police. No-knock warrants may be issued in every state except Oregon, prohibited by state law, Florida, prohibited by several states, but for the most part, they're enacted. The number of no-knock raids has increased from 3,000 in 1981 to over 50,000. That was in 2005. Can you imagine the increase now? There's estimated 60 to 70,000 in 2010. What does that mean? They got a hit on us. But we already know that. Everyone listening and paying attention to this history understands that this is something just like lynching. This is something that's been persevered and really been sought after to come and get us at every turn, at any time, on any street, any cornfield. Don't break down in the cornfield. You will get killed because you're African. Because you're African, which is why we must come together collectively to fight off this devil, this beast, this thing. Well, I won't call him a devil. I know he's inhumane. I know that he does not have our interest. You and I both know that you and I have never, even when you think you made it, you find out that you end up being like Bill Cosby, or you end up, even Oprah is potential bait if she doesn't go along with the program. You find out that anyone that thought that they made successes, they even exhibit us on television. They exhibit us in the theaters. After they've gotten done using us, they throw us away like dirty tissue paper. We're the ones that have to come together and do for ourselves what nobody else will do. So let's move on further. That no-knock law predated. It went to the 70s, okay? That's back in the 1970s. The fact of the matter, it went prior to then. It started with Fred Hampton. It says no-knock warrants may be issued in every state. Again, I say, except Oregon and other states. The number of no-knock raids has increased again, 3,000 in 1981 to well over 50,000 to date. The case of Breonna Taylor on March 13, 2020, Louisville Metro Police Department officers shot and killed Breonna Taylor in her apartment after being fired upon, they said, by Kenneth Walker. But remember, they didn't even announce themselves. Again, it was a case of them breaking into the door. Kenneth Walker didn't know if anyone was breaking in on him, just like Amir Locke did not know. Well, he was so asleep, he didn't even know he was being broken in on. He was shaken. He was woke. He was awakened in shock. He was hurt. He was like, what the hell is going on, is what he said in his mind. He didn't have his hand to get finger on the trigger again. But in the case of Walker, you saw how many shots they shot up in that house. And then the only ones that only time the officers got charged when they shot in the white folks' apartment. No charges. And thanks to Daniel Cameron, a sellout, he's the district attorney who called for a grand jury, but never once brought Breonna Taylor's name into the grand jury for any indictments on the officers who murdered her. This is the same thing that we have going on that occurred with Amir Locke. But the bottom line is, if we don't stay vigilant, then they'll probably drop the ball on Amir Locke. Then there's another case we'll talk about, Demontario Gibson here pretty soon. But let's move further. Let's talk about what happened with Fred Hampton and Mark Clark that night. In the case of Fred Hampton and Mark Clark, the imperialist murder of Fred Hampton on December the 4th, 1969, a combination of imperialist forces, the FBI, the Chicago Police Department, J. Edgar Hoover, who was the man in tights, or woman in tights. He was the FBI director, Mayor of Chicago, Richard J. Daley, Alderman Vrdolyak, and Hammerhand, at the time, future police superintendent and African torturer. Then he was Officer Burr, became superintendent back in the 80s. And he tortured over 100 black men down in a 5-story underground police department on 55th Street in the black community, in the African community in Chicago, Illinois. Well, in the case of Fred Hampton, they said it was only 99 bullets that were shot in there. They said that the Black Panthers shot at them. No, they never did get off a shot. The intent, just as it was with Amir Locke, when they went in, not necessarily for Amir Locke, whoever was in that house, they were going in to kill. Just as they did with Breonna Taylor. Just as they did with Fred Hampton and Mark Clark. While their wives, while their women, they were laying in the bed, one pregnant, Fred Hampton Jr.'s mother. These dogs shot throughout the whole house 999 rounds. And Fred Hampton covered his wife's body with his body. Then that wasn't enough. He didn't die instantly, because when they came in, they put a pillow over his face and shot him to death and laughed about it. These men, brothers, these comrades had not shot one round. It was that intent at 2 or 3 in the morning to go in and commit murder. So when you talk about no-knock warrants, when you talk about these atrocious policies, or you talk about these so-called laws, or they are laws that work for them, these laws that cause you and I just no different than resisting arrest. You can get killed on resisting arrest, which is a slave law. And that slave law predates, and I'll give you a little bit of history on that. It was because the slave master was having babies, as you well know, with the slave sisters, right? So he'd father maybe 15 children with different sisters in the field. What happened was the old prune, and she was an old prune, the slave master's wife, would get very jealous because she see these caramelized African babies that, and mind you, I said caramelized. It means they were lighter than dark as they originally come from across the waters. And so they see the caramelized babies, and this is where you came when they came up with, and you see it in some satire type of situations, like even in cartoons, you see them hit a child in the head with a frying pan, and it would seem like it would be no effect, but that would actually happen. They take the iron skillet and hit the child in the head, sometimes killing them. They'd hit the woman who had the child. This is where I'm going to show you where resistance of arrest, resisting arrest comes in. The resisting arrest was only instituted to protect the slave master's wife, the white woman who committed these heinous murders and acts on our sisters and our little kids when she was upset because the sister had fathered the child, which was not of her own free will, of a rapist, the husband. So she would poke him in the eye. She would throw hot grease on him. This is what she did. So they created a law. And in the law, it stated that, well, the slave resisted. So the death by resistance was justified. So thus we have, and that was back in 1740. If I'm not mistaken, 1740 is when they enacted the resistance law. That was to protect the white slave owner's white wife or Caucasian or colonizer. That's what that was all about. And so now it's been drummed up and really weaponized to late day 2022. Whereas if you jerk because an imperialist soldier, a race soldier, grabs your arm, and you know it's a natural reaction when they grab your arm or your clothing, you're gonna react, you're gonna jerk, you're gonna have some kind of motion. And that's what happened there. That's exactly what happens when our brothers and sisters get killed, shot by police, imperialists, colonizers, under the call of resisting arrest, or I fear for my life. So we know that history now. That goes back to 1740, and the slave master's wife, the Caucasian who had dried up, so he's out looking for younger sex tools, whether it be boys, girls, men, women. That's what kind of dog you dealing with, a beast. That's what you deal with. So now we want to get on further, as we were talking about Fred Hampton and these murders and this horrendous murder. And as we've been looking through the slides, you notice that there were they said 99 bullets, but there were 999. The way they did our brother, the chairman, Fred Hampton, was so horrendous. And it was an act to show us. This is when, in that same period, 8 days later, they went to California and murdered 30 more Black Panthers. This is when the breakup and the breakdown of the revolution, this is how they destroyed the revolution, was based on these actions that were taken to weaken the structure of revolution in any community. You know, there was a time where we said brother and sister, we really meant that. We walked down the street, we called a brother, we meant brother. When we walked down the street, we saw a sister, we said, sister, hey, good afternoon, sister. And we did a dap, what is called a dap, which is a hand gesture. Then we did the power shake. We did the Black Power shake, you know. And these things were sincere, and we really did. This is when gangs were, and thanks to Chairman Fred Hampton, who had brought all the gangs together in Chicago, where there was no more beef. where there was no more chaos like we see today, where there was no more shootouts, where there was no more spraying of cars, drive-bys, where was no more shooting up houses. We've gotten out of hand and out of control because the slave master, the colonizer, the imperialist, the colonial capitalist, those who took our resources and took us as a resource, which is their gain, their economic gain, and you and I always end up poor, broke, and insecure. We can't even, in a lot of cases, take care of our families. And they tell us it's our fault. It is not your or my fault. It is not your fault that you're in the condition that you're in. What is your fault and my fault if we don't begin to come together as a collective? If you and I don't begin to work together, if you and I begin, or we want to keep on patty caking and having fear, or not working as one unit, or if I want to play like I got all the answers and you say you got all the answers, but we never come together because both of us together could have the answer, then we'll always be another 150 years of this if we live. Things are escalating, as we well know. We're going to talk about our brother now, Demontario Gibson. Demontario is a brother down in Mississippi. This happened a few months back. But just like the case, you look at this when I talk about Demontario Gibson, it's a case of the Case brothers, right? These brothers, no, father and son, I'm sorry. The cases were the two men who had literally tried, and he's a FedEx, matter of fact, Demontario is a FedEx worker. And in the case of them hunting him down, and first of all, he thought they were trying to drive by him. He thought that they were trying to go around him. But in fact, they were trying to stop this brother and pull him over, get him to pull over to the side so that they could then do what had happened to Ahmaud Arbery. A black FedEx driver says he was delivering in Brookhaven, Mississippi, like last month. This happened in January, when two white men attacked him, with one reportedly firing multiple shots at his delivery truck. Driver Demontario Gibson, 24, of Utica, Mississippi, told the Mississippi Free Press today that he delivered a package on January 24th when he saw a white pickup truck blocking the end of the drive. Gibson said, in my mind, I'm thinking the driver is going to go to the store or something. But then they get really close to me and I start blowing my horn, or they start blowing their horn. I proceed to leave the driveway. As I'm exiting the driveway, he starts driving into the grass in an attempt to bite me. In other words, cut me off. My instincts kick in. I turn around and I'm trying to get out of the neighborhood. I start kicking the grass because I don't know what his intentions are. I run to about 2 or 3 houses. There's another man standing in the middle of the street. Now, mind you, he's out of the truck. He's a FedEx driver, pointing a gun at my windows and signaling me to stop. This is in his truck with his hands, along with the word stop. Stop, he says. I don't shake my head. I hide behind the steering wheel and walk around him too. As soon as I move around him, he starts firing at my vehicle. As Gibson walked toward the end of the road, Gibson said one of the managers at FedEx called him, and he told him what was going on. They're shooting at you. He says, yes. In other words, they're shooting at me, man. He said, they're shooting at you. He said, yes. Okay, get back to the white boss at FedEx. This is what he told Gibson. As he's trying to exit Brookhaven, Gibson said he saw a white pickup truck following him from behind. I just went as fast as I could, he said. He followed me up the interstate, he said. once he was about 10 or 15 minutes down the interstate and the white pickup was no longer following him, Gibson said he called another manager and told him what had happened. The manager told him that they would file a police report the next morning. But Gibson himself called the dispatch to report the incident. I reached out to the dispatch and told him what was going on. And I only got a tiny bit of a storytelling when he cut me off. And he was like, "Were you at the address?" Like, you always got to explain and prove. They don't take our first word. This is what was going on. He says, "I said yes." This is Brother Gibson, said the FedEx driver. He was like, "Okay, I got a call from a suspect at this address." I was like, "Sir, I'm not a suspect. I work for FedEx. I was just doing my job." I even told him they fired at me. He was like, "Well, they didn't tell me that." I said, "Oh, you get that? White folks didn't tell me that." Of course they don't or wouldn't. He told me to save the rest of my story, and he would take my name down and give it to my supervisor. This is the dispatch at the police department. He'll take his name down and give it to his supervisor. In other words, nobody went out to do any arrests, right? Nobody went out to clear up anything. But let me finish this story. Once he got back to the FedEx's station, Gibson said he spoke to the first manager to examine the rear of the truck shortly after the gunfire. There were bullets in the back of the van, inside the package, and everything like that, he said, through his lawyer. This is when Gibson had gotten a lawyer named Carlos Moore of the Cochran firm. Gibson shared photos showing bullet holes in the truck, in the package, and a bullet lying on the vehicle's floor bed. Gibson said the truck he was driving at the time of the incident was a Hertz rental with a Hertz marking on the side. Not an official FedEx truck, but that he was wearing the FedEx uniform. Gibson goes on further to say, "I felt humiliated at that point." The next day, January 25th, Gibson, now mind you, this incident went on the 24th of January. Gibson said one of his managers accompanied him to the Brookhaven Police Department to file a police report. Moore shared a copy of the police report with the Mississippi Free Press. Miss Candace Welch said she was Mr. Gibson's booze. I don't know what that means, at least in the van. There were 2 bullet holes, one in the rear door and one in the bumper, and 3 of the packages inside had bullet holes as well. He also had a picture of a bullet, which is still lying on the van, says the report. You can see the bullets in the pictures I have. Officer Kenneth Montgomery's report recounts the same story Gibson shared with the Mississippi Free Press. Anyway, let's go on further. He says, "I felt humiliated at the time because even if I did, in other words, I couldn't take the law into their hands," Gibson said. They should not have, even if it was like he did something wrong. It wasn't up to them, speaking of the case, father and son. So I told him all I did was my job. If he thought I was suspicious, that was on him. He was like, "Okay, I was just asking as it was." This is the cop on the inside. The Brookhaven Police Department did not respond to the request for comment today, of course. So Gibson said the police chief tried to emphasize how immoral the city of Brookhaven was. Well, what's that got to do with their morality? Why is nobody being arrested, right? Here we go again. No different than the prosecuting attorney in the, not the Ahmaud Arbery trial, but the one that was prior to her who got arrested as well, who did not do her due diligence. There were no arrests. You notice that the McMichaels were out for 2 months before any arrest because of outcry. That's because people raised up. That's because we're sick and tired of being sick and tired. But we should not even have to go through that if due process is going to be served on our behalf. If they say that you are some kind of United States citizen, or you are American, or whatever, I mean, do you really believe that today? Do you think that you really are a part of a construct, which is a colonial mode of production that you own and operate, that you really feel like kumbaya with? I don't think so. I don't think any of us do. And those who want to pretend, speaking of the bourgeoisie neo-colonizer, all of you who want to continuously pretend and tell us to keep running back to a system. You hear me read what the system is telling the family, what the system is telling the boss and brother Gibson, Demontario, that we got immorality in the city. Hell, man, they was gonna kill me. They shot at me. Where are the arrests? Gibson said the police chief tried to emphasize how more immoral the city of Brookhaven was, which I found strange. Brookhaven has a history of lynchings. In 1955, civil rights activist Lamar Smith dies after someone shot him on the lawn of the Lincoln County Courthouse in Brookhaven. Now, Brookhaven is no different than any county in the country. Brookhaven, no matter where you go, you'll see a Brookhaven or Minneapolis everywhere you go. If you're in downtown Chicago, if you're in Chicago, Illinois, you got Cook County. If you are in Miami, Florida, you got Dade County. You got the same circumstance when you talk about the colonized against the colonizer, or should I say, the colonizer imperialist devils, dogs, beasts against the people, especially those of us of color. That's all over the country and it's all over the globe. There's no difference. There is no way that you and I can say that is bad. It's not as bad in Chicago as it is in Snatchback, Mississippi. You and I cannot say that it's any different in South Carolina than it is in Los Angeles, California. We're treated all the same no matter where we go. And those of us who want to pretend that, if I just do these things that they tell me to do, and I keep on going to school, going to college, they're going to treat me different, or they're going to look at me totally different. They're going to make me successful. You find that when you get up in there, there's a locked door there. Now you may have some brains, and you do. You're a smart African. The fact of the matter is that you need to bring it back down home, back at home, and bring your talents and gifts. And we all need to collectively work together and pull away from this system that does not want us, this system that kills us every day. Every day. The bullets that come out of guns in your community and my community are from the guns that are planted in the community by your enemy, by my enemy, by the permanent enemy. This is not something that's new. You heard me mention about the lynchings back in the 1950s in this same place in Mississippi, Brookhaven. So it's no different today as it was then. There was no different. They'd do the same thing to you as they did, or me, as they did to Emmett Till back in 1955. That thing has not changed. When they run up their flags and their Confederate flag, they're proud of what they do. Some of the filthiest people on the planet are the colonizers. But they tell you and me we don't qualify. They tell you and me we can't take care of our children. They tell you and me, well, hell, if you break my legs and you call me a cripple, you broke my legs. So it's stated, it says, run it as a hate crime. Gibson said a third officer took him back to the scene of the alleged shooting to look for bullet holes and invited the FedEx driver to get out of the car and help look for the bullet casing, but he found none. He said police told him that the driver of the white pickup truck was named Gregory Case, and that the person standing on the street was his son, Brandon Case. Said Travis and Gregory McMichael. Travis the son here is Brandon Case. McMichael is Travis, and the daddy, like Gregory, they both named Gregory. Gregory Case, Gregory McMichael. So when you run across a colonizer with the name Gregory, you better watch that thing, right? Or any one of them. And that the person standing on the street was his son, Brandon Case. The cases came to light at the police station on February the 1st. Police charged the Gregory Case with conspiracy and the Brandon Case with felony assault. The men posted bail on bonds of what? Small bonds for them, 75,000 and 150,000, respectively, the next day. The Lincoln County Jail told the Mississippi Free Press. Gibson said FedEx initially put him back on the same path. Now, this is what FedEx did. Put him back on the same route after the shooting, but he resisted returning to work at Brookhaven. I don't blame him. You can't blame him. What the hell do you mean? First of all, you weren't concerned about me. You just wanted me, number one, to bring the vehicle in. You didn't say, look, we're gonna meet you at the police station. This is FedEx. Then you would further insult me and tell me, well, just go home and get some rest and we'll deal with this tomorrow. That's number two. Then you're going to tell me, after all was said and done and these two fiends mined out, oh, go back on the same route. In other words, go to the same street where they live at. What kind of crap is that, right? I'm really on unpaid time off because I told them I was uncomfortable. This is Demontario. And I said, and I was too worried about being on that route. And they said they would do whatever they could about changing the route for me. We're leaving, he said. Moore told the Mississippi Free Press that he plans to ask the FBI and the Mississippi Bureau of Investigation to launch an official investigation. He also plans to ask the United States Justice Department to prosecute it as a hate crime. But they need to do, it was no different than the McMichaels wanting to do federal time. When you do federal time, in their case, being the colonizer, they get an opportunity to choose what prison they're going to serve time in. Well, I'm grateful to know, and you should be too, that the federal judge said, no, you're going to do the state time. Because they're going to be caught up in that state time. When they go into the state, they got to watch out for Bubba and everybody else, right? They got to watch out for the pencil in the neck like they did Jeffrey Dahmer, right? You got to look out for that. Both of them. They're going to be ridden like mules. And I hope so. I hope they get everything that they got coming to them and then some. I hope that I hope they die a horrendous death. I believe that people that do things to us, that will be even our own kind. If you rape somebody, you need to pay. If you murder babies, that's what people are doing now. You need to pay. Now, I don't mean by that system. I think that this is my opinion, that there's an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. I won't take it too much further on that. You know what I mean? That when one of them kills one of us, then there needs to be a payment. That's my opinion. Moore compared the incident to the shooting death of a black man, Ahmaud Arbery, who was jogging when the three white men, including a father and a son, chased and killed him in Galen County, Georgia, in 2020. It's just sad that this happens. It looks like there's a copycat duo doing the Ahmaud Arbery case. They said they saw this man who was black, and they just pulled him up and shot many times at least the younger son did. Same thing that Travis did to Ahmaud Arbery. The old man tried to trap him. That was the father. They were working together to try to kill this man. I mean, they shot him several times. It's amazing that he survived. That's the name of that tune with Demontario Gibson. Now I want to move on to my final portion, which is the pursuit of the cover-up. Louisiana United International's Belinda Parker Brown, as you well know, has been covering the Ronald Green case since it started, and matter of fact, that Louisiana United International had not gotten, after 2 years, the photos to be released or the video to be released, we would never have heard about this on national news. But thank goodness, the pursuit, and that's what I mean. Why is it that we always have to pursue something that is true? Why is it that what happens to them is totally different than what happens to us, depending on what the crime is, or really the crime? There's an imbalance. So when these sick dogs who claim that Ronald Green ran into a tree, actually, they ran him down like they were hunting. Slave catchers, right? Just for sport. They beat that brother. You saw it in the video. They tased that brother. He was begging for his life. He was losing his breath. They tased him and told him when they were beating him, you better not bleed on me. That's what they told Ronald Green. And this is all captured on video. If you haven't seen that video, it was worse than what we saw with George Floyd. But this is what they think about us, you and me. So in the meantime, in the pursuit of why nothing was happening, Belinda Parker Brown, CEO of Louisiana United International, Louisiana, went to a lot of meetings. She went to the Louisiana State Police Board meetings. She had contacted the governor of the state, John Bell Edwards. She talked with the NAACP president, and don't put too much stock in them because they tend to be the buffer. I'm speaking of NAACP. They're the buffer between Massa and you. They're the buffer. And I see this because it's happening right here where I live at, in Battle Creek, Michigan. I find this everywhere I go. The NAACP has been set up to kind of like try to play you and me, that if you let them handle the cases, if you just let them handle the civil rights situation, justice will be served. And there's never no justice. When you go to NAACP, that's why I love people on the streets, boots on the ground. This is the only way we're going to get things done. And I don't mean just necessarily Black Lives Matter. You cannot afford to work with anyone that would sell you out. You cannot afford to work with anything that would sell you out and redirect your original goal. Well, back to the John Bell Edwards, who's the governor of the state of Louisiana. John Bell Edwards finally been called out, been shown after all the hurdles that John Bell Edwards was covering up the murder of Ronald Green, who was horrendously murdered, a victim of a sport. And we're a sport to them as they chased him in the car, caught him off in the woods, got him out of the car while he was begging. What did I do? What did I do? I didn't do nothing. I'm following your directions. It's just like bend over, boy. I'm doing it, boss. He was doing everything they asked him to do. And they beat him, tased him, and beat him some more in handcuffs. They drug his ankle, drug him by the ankles with ankle cuffs on. They drug him like he was just something. And we should be firecracker hot with the things that go on with our people every day. With our women, how they disrespect, they rape our women, these imperialist dogs. Just ask them how they put terror in our children, kicking in the doors, how they come up like the Gestapo, pointing guns at our children. This is the thing that they do. They can't help it. That's what they do, and that's their law. Their law is not there to protect you and me. Their laws, I don't care how we twist it, if we want to. Why is it that when, for an example, why is it that no one went to prison after they gave the family $25 million in the Breonna Taylor case? They paid Fred Hampton's family and Mark Clark's family off with $1.8 million. Like they were going to shut up and be quiet from then on. Then they turned around just last year and murdered Malcolm X's daughter. Poison. We're all hard targets. We need to get to the root of that. I'm going to close out by saying this on Kctvnews. Please follow every week. It gets better. We're going to set it up that at some points in time, you'll be hearing me make calls. Next week, I intend to make a call down to Mississippi to talk with the county. I'm going to do this while you're listening in. to see if we get any responses. And I guarantee you, because this happens every time, when you call them and ask them specific questions about what's going on with the case, they always want to shovel it over to someone else. And you make that call to the prosecutor's office, well, we can't comment because the case is still open. We're tired of open cases that we don't have a clue about. We're tired of hearing the stuff about what they can't do when they cover up. We're tired of the cover up. We're tired of it. Aren't you tired of it? Good evening, good day, good morning, and good afternoon.